Welcome to another episode of Rob and Avis Ramble, where we take the discussions that we normally have in private around our kitchen island or wherever we happen to be and decided, let's put those publicly on the internet because why not?
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. All right, what should we ramble about today? There's some craziness has happened today. There was Donald Trump was convicted on something like 34, 33 accounts.
I don't know. It's like we're talking about tire sizes, not convictions. That's a high number.
That's a high number. Yeah. So, where's all that going to go?
I don't know. And to show my ignorance again, you were telling me that the judge said that not the whole jury needed to agree for a conviction on a specific crime. So as long as some of them thought he was guilty of a crime, he would be considered guilty of that crime.
That was my understanding. There was some kind of instruction to the jury that was something along the lines of if all of them, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about this, anybody, but my understanding is that, what he instructed them was that they could, all of them needed to find him guilty of something. But if 4 of them found him guilty of one charge and 4 of them found him guilty of a different charge and 4 of them found him guilty of some other charge, and they didn't all agree that he was guilty of all 3 charges, but the judge would still consider that a conviction.
Okay, so the number was like 4. How many jurors were there?
There's 12.
So a third. We're only requiring a third of the jury to agree on any specific count.
Something like that. I feel like there's something that I don't really understand there, how that's possible. But I did see in reading some comments about that someone who claimed to be an attorney, I don't really know. But, this is just the internet, right? People are always telling the truth, so I'm not really sure. But yeah, they said something about that was actually like a thing. That is like an actual like legal thing that can happen. I'd never heard that before, so I don't know what it's called. But seems a little unusual.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's kind of puts the country in an interesting place now, right? So Donald Trump has been convicted of a crime. I think the sentencing is set for 45 days from now. Okay. There's a lot of conjecture if he'll actually go to jail or not. And if he's just going to end up with probation, because a lot of people believe it's more of a political trial than anything else. And really all they wanted was the conviction so that they can now, call him a convicted felon.
Sure.
And
does that disqualify him as president?
I don't think it does, actually. I haven't seen anybody say that's the case. Everything I've kind of heard is that he could still run for president from office, is my understanding. But I think interestingly enough, can felons vote? Like they can't own firearms. They can't, there are restrictions on felon.
They can't vote while they're incarcerated. I think after that, then they return to most of their
I think because once you
rights.
pay your debt to society, but it's not the way it is with firearms.
No.
Yeah, there are some cases about that happening right now. To basically, that once a convicted felon has paid his debt to society, they should get all their rights back. Right, that's the way it should work. So there are some things moving through the courts around that firearm topic. But so if we just kind of played out the worst case scenario here, so Donald Trump, they sentence him in 45 days, they sentence him to some kind of jail or prison time. And now, is he running for office from prison? If he actually gets elected, but he's in prison, like what does that mean?
If you can't vote because you're in prison, can you be on the ballot? That's an interesting, you would think no.
You would think.
If you can't exercise your voting rights, you don't, you have to be legal to vote to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what the law is there. I know there's a bunch of people out there way smarter than us that probably know this. I just find it a very interesting topic that I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out.
I'd like to say we're smart. We're just uneducated on this topic.
Yeah. Sure. Let's go with that.
Sure.
So yeah, but potentially some craziness, right?
Yeah.
or potentially, I don't know how likely it is, but are we going to have I mean, already some historic stuff is happening with having a former president convicted as such. And now are we going to have the opportunity to vote for a president that's potentially incarcerated?
Yeah. How will he
Or
take his oath to office? Will they do that in his jail cell?
I don't know. Or is he just going to be on probation? We don't know. I mean, that's, something else I heard the talking heads talking about today was, like if he's on probation, like he may have to get his probation officers, or like, how does that work? Like he's have to get permission to leave the state, right? I mean, those are things you normally have to do when you're on probation, right? You're on a string. So as he's campaigning and all that other stuff, it's a very...
So he'll need a high-profile probation officer that he can hire to just travel with him, but...
Yeah, but the probation officer works for this government, right?
I know.
Yeah. So
that doesn't work either.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, but nobody does. It's unprecedented.
Yeah. So we got that going on, and we have the whole libertarian nominee, which a lot of people are saying he's not really representative of their values, and perhaps they're not libertarians after all. If that's what the Libertarian Party wants to represent them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a surprise. I have not educated myself on
Chase
the nominee
Oliver
yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's seemingly, he's okay with, he's like pro mandate, for vaccines and those sorts of things. I mean, that alone doesn't seem to be very, libertarian minded and allowing people choice. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of other stuff. So just, I think a very unexpected representation for the Libertarian Party, but there's just another like conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it. Like, did the Libertarian Party basically put this candidate up knowing that people in the Libertarian Party probably aren't going to vote for this candidate, at least some significant portion of them? So is that forcing more votes over to the conservative? Because libertarians are probably going to vote for conservatives. I mean, not that conservatives they got plenty of problems, right? But there's, at least on the topic of like guns or like other, kind of more freedom-minded things, people might label it. Conservatives tend to kind of lean more in that direction than the Democrats do. So it seemed to make more sense, libertarians, if they're going to not vote libertarian and they're going to vote and not abstain, they may end up voting for conservative. So was this some kind of great conspiracy amongst the Libertarian Party? I don't know.
I don't know either.
Trump, there had to be some backroom discussions going on, right? Because Trump, he came and spoke at the Libertarian Convention, which is also like another historic thing, and basically making a deal and saying, if you guys give me your votes, I'll put some libertarians into my cabinet positions, which is not something the Libertarian Party has enjoyed up to this point. So
yeah, so that would be interesting.
That would be interesting. So yeah, so was there some backroom deals happening? I feel like there probably was. Like, let's just put up the worst libertarian candidate we have. Yeah. Let's push all these votes to Donald Trump. Let's try to get him in office, and let's see if we can get some libertarians in high cabinet positions.
Interesting.
Actually, not a bad strategy, because libertarians, we never win elections anyways. Not at the national level.
No, you say we. You're claiming to be libertarian today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we typically have been, right? I mean, we've been, pretty drinking libertarian Kool-Aid. Not with the current nominee.
I've been a libertarian since the beginning. I voted for Ross Perot.
Yeah.
My most educated year coming out of high school.
Was he libertarian or independent? What did he run as?
He might be an independent.
Yeah, I think he ran as an independent.
But still.
Yeah.
That's still a libertarian vote.
That's still a libertarian vote. That's like not towing the party, the uniparty line. Yeah.
Exactly. That was my most educated year. They forced us to study it.
Yeah.
And I was a good student, so I studied it.
Yeah.
Once I didn't have to.
Yeah.
Stopped.
So how are you going to vote this election?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. I know. That makes some people's heads explode when we say that. But yeah, you pretty much just vote.
Yeah, I don't care to really keep up with it to the level that I feel like I need to keep up with it, and I trust you with my life, so why not trust you with my vote?
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. I make
Yeah.
no apologies for getting 2 votes. I mean, we're married.
Yeah.
You know, one of my jobs is kind of looking out for the family at a bigger picture, right? And if I think you know, using your vote in a particular way makes sense, then you do it. But you know, it's not like a forced thing. Like you're just like, yeah, just whatever, tell me how to vote.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I ask questions. I try to stay on top of the topics. Generally, we agree anyways. So, but yeah.
But if we didn't, I mean, I can't really foresee a time where we probably didn't align politically. But, you know, if that were to happen, just, you know, in theory, so you'd still just go with what I suggested, what I told you to do.
Yeah, because I probably wouldn't be educated enough to know that I disagreed.
Yeah.
In truth.
Yeah. Yeah. You just trust me as your husband and I'm making the best choice, even if you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're a good wife. You're a good wife.
I don't enjoy spending my days listening to all of the debates and everything. I mean, I might pick up one here or there, but it's just not interesting to me.
Yeah. So hopefully now, you know, maybe by this time we've picked up like 5 people listening. I don't really know, but you know, I have to ask out there, you know, so now with my 2 votes that I get this election season, what should I do with them? I mean, I'm not voting for Biden. That is not happening. So I'm not voting for the Libertarian candidate. That's not happening. So I'm either abstaining, which I hate, or voting conservative, which I also don't have warm and fuzzies about, because believe me, I have plenty of problems with Trump.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm still noodling in my head what I'm going to do.
Well, I keep threatening to just write your name in.
Yeah, I know you do
On
that
more
a
of a
lot.
local level, but
Yeah, all our local elections, you're like, I want to go in and write your name down. And I'm like,
Yeah.
don't do that.
oh, that's not all how you react.
Yeah,
It's more of a threatening level voice.
Yeah.
Don't you dare.
don't you dare. We're not wasting my extra vote on that. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to get nuts. I think you know, we're out. November is the election, right? So we're heading into June here shortly, and
Yeah, June in like 2 days.
yeah. So November, not too far off with that. 5 months.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to get pretty nuts.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody recalls back in 2020, the Time magazine article that was out there about how, you know, a bunch of backroom deals and, you know, people, they claim to be saving democracy and kind of all the steps that were taken. It was kind of an interesting article talking about the collusion, you know, but it was all painted under they were saving democracy, right? They were steering the election in a way that, you know, some leaders of industry and high political folks thought it should go, and, you know, kind of came up with a plan for how they could, we'll just say, legally manipulate the election,
Yeah.
you know, through, I think, a lot of different ways of censoring information and, you know, trying to change election laws and all these other things. And so, you know, it's not, if that was all true and Time Magazine reported the truth, I mean, there's no reason to believe that those sort of things aren't going on again, probably on both sides.
Yeah.
Right. So, which is just going to make things even crazier.
So then why vote?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a topic people talk about, right? Does your vote actually even matter?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to vote because even, I mean, like I said, we typically vote Libertarian. So, I know I go in voting knowing that my vote really doesn't count, right? Because Libertarians aren't going to win. So, but it's more of a, you know, I don't know, call it a middle finger. I mean, I still want my voice to be heard that like, hey, I don't approve of anything you guys are doing.
Yeah. That's a great family debate.
Yeah.
We have people in our family that are libertarian leaning but refuse to vote libertarian.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, it's, you know, I do think most people in general conversation would agree with a lot of kind of the Libertarian Party principles. But, you know, it's kind of like they're like, I don't want to waste my vote, so I'm going to vote lesser of evils. And
Yeah.
we're all kind of being forced into that in a way.
Mm.
right? Which is unfortunate. If you want your vote to count, that's what you're being forced into. If you'd rather kind of use your vote as a middle finger, just to say, yeah, I know I'm throwing my vote away, but I'm doing it anyways because that's how much I disagree. So
Yeah.
but I don't know if we're going to do that in this election. I mean, I can't in good conscience vote for the Libertarian candidate. So, like I said, either abstaining or voting probably Republican. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Ooh, so maybe we just can stay home and not go out and vote. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that's not
We'll
going to
never
happen.
do that.
We're definitely going to go. Yeah, we'll go.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess let's see. Moving on. What else should we talk about? There was some kind of mass shooting in Minneapolis that was just kind of starting to unfold a bit as we were, coming in here to ramble a bit.
Mm.
So yeah, just not good stuff. Yeah,
No, that's never good.
No, I don't know what the answer is there. I feel quite strongly that the answer is not, impeding people's Second Amendment rights or the right to bear arms. I think if nothing else, just out of practicality, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta have a way to defend yourself, and I know a lot of people disagree with that. It makes a lot of people, that's a topic that really gets people going. I mean, this shooting that's happening in Minneapolis isn't going to be any different than any of the others. I mean, it's going to end up calling for more gun control. It's going to be fighting about it, right? You're going to have people on social media making their arguments, probably me included, for why gun control is a bad idea. But then you're also going to have people arguing just, the more emotional argument, as I see it, that they need to ban guns. And
excuse me. You can't ban them all. I mean, it's just...
Well, neither should you. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, even if you could, I mean, we could just theorize about that, right? So let's just say that everybody was in agreement and they're like, yeah, let's ban guns. You're not really banning guns. I mean, are you going to leave guns in the hands of the police and military? I imagine you are. So guns are still in circulation. People do steal guns from police. That happens quite frequently, actually. So you're still going to have guns getting into the hands of bad guys. You're still going to have, just like illegal drugs come into this country now, you'll have guns flowing from other country, right? You're not really getting rid of them. You are maybe removing them in great numbers from the hands of the law-abiding, and maybe in some numbers of the hands of the non-law-abiding, but still plenty of non-law-abiding would still have them.
Sure.
And then...
Just like now.
Yeah. And to go even further, I mean, there's like 400 million guns in this country. Like, the chances of gathering all those up, even if you agree that was a good idea, pretty much nil.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're never going to get them all back.
Yeah. That was my point. You can't really ban them. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Well, and then, with the advancements of technology, I mean, people are 3D printing guns. It's a thing, right? Like it or not, it's a reality of our society.
Yeah. And take away guns. Let's say you do it. It doesn't end evil. Evil still exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know how to do it, but you can take things and put them in pipes and cause mass destruction to people around them. I mean,
there's plenty of other ways to harm people.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it with vehicles, right? People
Yeah.
driving vehicles through crowds, knives, machetes.
I mean, I was a young girl once and I was chased by a boy in a stick before. I mean, boys find weapons.
Boys find weapons. Yeah, I mean, it can even be as simple as a fist, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is a question I always kind of like to ask folks that are pushing for gun control. I just like, where is the line? Like, should people have a feasible means of defending themselves no matter how they are attacked, right? So, if you think about it, you got a 100-pound woman and she's being attacked by a 250-pound man, is she expected to fight back with her fist or a knife? Or like, what is acceptable, right? Like, a gun is a much better force equalizer in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, could a woman of that size have a chance against a man of that size? Potentially, depending on her skill and her training.
Yeah, maybe a little, but it's unlikely.
It's unlikely, yeah. And the general person walking down the street that hasn't been focusing on that type of training, no.
Yeah. Yeah. There's actually a really good book that I like to tell everybody to read whenever I get the opportunity. It's called When Violence is the Answer.
And who wrote it?
You're not supposed to ask me that. I can't remember the name of the author right now. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Okay.
It's, what's the guy's
When
name?
Violence is the Answer is the title.
Yeah. When Violence is the Answer. Man, why can't I remember the guy name of the title? I tell it to people all the time. Of course, when you ask me on the spot, I can't remember it.
Well,
But in the book, I mean, it's probably not like the title sounds, but it's
yeah, no, it's not.
yeah, he's kind of just more talking about like I think he has like a tagline in the book that says something like violence is rarely the answer, but when it is the answer, it's the only answer. And he talks about like social violence versus asocial violence and how to recognize the difference between the two. Like social violence, like you might be out at a bar and some guy like bumps into you, right? And he's like, hey, and like he wasn't really looking, he's posturing for ego, right? So you can either posture for ego back, and that's kind of social violence. Like neither one of those guys want to kill each other, right? Or do serious harm to each other. It's just more about like an ego, kind of like a social posturing thing, right?
Sure.
And in those situations, those are the situations he talks about. Like violence is like, that's not the answer in that situation. Like as much as it hurts your ego, you should probably turn around and walk away. Whenever you can walk away from violence, you absolutely should.
Yeah.
But there's other situations that you never even saw coming, like some different situation. Somebody comes into the bar to shoot it up, or the grocery store, or walking with a knife and they're just randomly stabbing people, right? I mean, these sorts of things, as horrific as they are, do happen.
Yeah.
And that's asocial violence, right? The whole point is violence. They do not care. There's nothing you're going to say to that person to make them stop.
Yeah.
So in those situations, you need to be prepared to defend yourself. And he does talk about some techniques for that, apart from just firearms and, and some things that even he's taught, like smaller women, that they can maybe do to injure, that's a big thing he preaches on. Like you have to cause a mass injury one way or the other. And, no matter what that is. So like if you can focus all your kind of strength on like gouging out an eye or something like that, like you may actually have a chance.
Yeah.
But, go ahead.
I like a point that he brings up is that people are unable to engage in conflict when they're answering a question. So like in the bar thing, if somebody is like being aggressive with you in the bar, like one of his suggestions is, hey, I like that belt you're wearing and that's a super cool belt buckle. Where did you get it? And so their brain like does the math and then they start answering your question and then they forget kind of about the violence, not an asocial violence, but more in like a social violence situation. Yeah. So you can sort of de-escalate by asking questions.
Yeah.
Is one of the things that he brings up, which I don't know. That I always remember that now. Of course, that'll happen to me and they won't be wearing a belt and I'll be like, hey, where'd you get that belt buckle?
Well, if that happens when I'm with you, that won't happen. And
I don't go to bars
we keep talking about bars. I know, like we're like, I mean, you will pretty much never find us in a bar.
No.
So I don't know why we're going to the bar.
I don't know.
It's more likely like, the grocery store or
we might sit at the sushi bar.
Or the sushi bar. Yeah.
There you go.
When we're not doing carnivore.
Soon enough. It's on my list.
Yeah. So yeah, anyways, great book. I definitely recommend everybody read it. And, if you're reading it in a public area, the title's probably going to freak people out, but it's not what you think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
It's a good book. And, so yeah, I don't know what's happening with this mass shooting. I'm sure when we're kind of done sitting in here and talking about it, maybe we'll get some more news, but I already saw there were some fatalities and some other things. And so, I think, what is the answer? What is the answer to solving this? I mean, I honestly, mental health is always talked about, right? We could probably definitely do a better job with people's mental health. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what this is, right? It's some sort of mental illness that makes people want to act out asocially and, harm people that they don't even know. Yeah. For some reason, right?
I mean, yeah.
So
mental health in this country is a whole new level.
It's a whole new level. Yeah. Well, this stuff happens in other countries too, but it does. I mean, it does. I don't think there's any denying it happens in this country more than other countries because
statistically, if you look at like the medications being prescribed and the diagnoses coming out of the medical fields, the United States is ranking higher than a lot of other countries.
Yeah. So what's driving that? But as I often will tell people when we talk about these kind of dangerous and awful things that are happening, and I do not deny they are awful, right? These things should not be happening. It's heart wrenching, and just to think about somebody going out and just randomly killing people, whether that be no matter what weapon they're using to do it, car, guns, whatever it is. Yeah, I mean, not something at all, but kind of a standard response that I will give people at times is, wow, it sounds really dangerous out there. It's probably best to be as prepared as possible should that sort of danger find you, right?
Yeah.
And I truly do believe that. I mean, people deserve a right to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. Firearms do make a pretty effective force equalizer. If they did not, our police would not be carrying them, right? They carry them for a reason because it's a force equalizer that can be useful in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think too, like every time a situation happens, like you sort of change your life strategy, like first of all, we rarely go to the movies. When we do, we sit in the back row. It's not an accident, right?
Yeah.
Like you always know where the exits are. I don't like to go to concerts anymore because I don't like the big crowded spaces. I mean, it's sad, but yeah, like every time something happens, or like when we're teaching the kids to drive, like if you're pulling up to let somebody cross the road, I'm like, you have to give them the confidence that you're stopping, like come to a complete stop because...
Yeah, and assume the other person's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to live like that. But it's just a reality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a reality.
It's my reality.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not like, statistically, these things are very, very rare.
Yeah,
right? They really are. But of course, the news spins it up and they're trying to stoke fear in people. And I mean, somebody wins the lottery. So it is completely probable that something like that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. You actually had I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that or not, but you had a situation in which you used a firearm at one point.
I did.
You did not pull the trigger.
I did not.
But you were on a girls' weekend trip with several other girls.
Yeah. And I'm the person, when we check into the cabin, I look in all the closets, under the beds. I check the doors. I check all the windows, make sure they're locked. When it gets dark, I shut the blinds. Like, I'm the freaky one.
Right. You're making sure that place is secure as it possibly can be. Yeah.
Again, knowing the exits, knowing all of that stuff. So
Yeah. So just kind of the short version of that story is, I won't make you completely rehash it, but
no.
you woke up, to someone basically. You were sharing a room with another girl. You guys had separate beds.
Mm-hmm. Two twin beds in a room.
Beds. There was like 8 of you staying in the cabin, 8 women, I think.
Yeah. And dispersed through
in
other
different
bedrooms.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 bedrooms or something in this
something
place.
Like that.
Yeah. And in a cabin out in Virginia when we lived there. And you woke up to a guy in the bedroom standing over your bed.
Yeah.
And
at the foot of the bed, between the two twin beds. Yeah.
Yeah. And he stood there for a minute. He actually left the room temporarily.
Yes. I immediately didn't know it was a man because, as you stated, I had a roommate and I thought it could have been her.
Right, because it was dark. People should understand the lights are off. You had a little bit of backlight from some light outside.
There was street light outside, Yeah.
So you weren't quite sure, but then when you realized it wasn't your roommate and it was some man.
Yeah.
Who then did leave the room. But, that gave you an opportunity to retrieve your weapon. And you guys called the police.
Right,
A little bit of a fiasco with that happening. But in the commotion of trying to wake up your roommate and call the police, you guys made noise. A guy entered the room, and you ended up having to point a loaded firearm at an individual and basically, kind of giving him instruction about what his next moves were and weren't going to be.
Yeah.
And kind of crazy stuff. And interestingly enough, it took the police over 30 minutes to arrive.
Yes, it did.
I don't think people the people that believe that we shouldn't own guns or have ways to protect ourselves, I don't feel like they live with that reality and actually realize, like, you call the police, and that was not a very unpopulated area. Right?
No.
Yeah, and it still took them 30 minutes to arrive.
Yeah.
Imagine what happens when you're out in the middle of Wyoming or wherever you happen to be. I mean, sometimes the police can be hours away.
Yeah.
We do a lot of very, like, dispersed camping in areas. I mean, there's times we're 5 or 6 hours from pavement.
Yeah,
We are truly on our own, right?
Yeah. I mean, in this case, there was a new dispatcher and she accidentally disconnected. And because we had been sleeping, my roommate's phone was on silent. So when they tried to call her back, and with everything that was happening,
All the commotion, right? At this point, you're already pointing a gun at a guy and commanding him where to go and what to do.
So she didn't, she's behind me because I have the weapon and the man is in front of me. So she missed the call back. And so they called the state police because we were at a state park, or not the state police, the rangers.
Yeah.
For the park. And so, but yeah, it took both sets of authorities about 30 minutes to get there.
Which is just, so much can happen in 30 seconds, let alone 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the whole thing was crazy.
Yeah. So kind of long story short, you basically, you follow this guy around the house for like 15, 20 minutes. He was obviously some kind of on something, mental illness. We're not really sure what his intentions were, but he did eventually leave, and he left before the police arrived.
Well, I think mistake on our part, in the commotion, one of the ladies there just freaking lost her mind and kicked him out of the house.
Yes. Yeah.
And he left willingly. And then after that, I was like, oh my God, this is worse. I can no longer
now we
see
don't know
them.
where he is. Is he coming back? What's happening?
Yeah.
And I know you guys ended up actually leaving the cabin. You called me. Yeah, you called me at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And let me know everything that had just happened, because all this was going down to like 2 a.m. or something.
Yeah, it was middle of the night.
Yeah. So, it was a kind of crazy story. And, so these things do happen, right? And who knows what would have happened if you hadn't been in a position to take control of that situation. Maybe nothing, maybe something. And thankfully we didn't have to find out.
Yeah.
And thankfully nobody died. That's the other thing too, is I think, there's no desire to take someone's life if you don't have to do it.
No.
You don't want to have to live with that.
Just the gravity of being in that position for so long. Because there were things that happened, like I immediately told him to put his hands up so that I could see them. It was still dark. And then, slowly lights start coming on, and he had taken off his jacket and left it on the sofa.
Yeah.
And, as the commotion of everybody waking up to this crazy situation, at one point he was like, well, let me just go get my jacket first. And that was the most panic.
Right.
Like,
what do you have in your jacket?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And all of these, like, nobody stopped him, and he's walking over there, and I'm just like, I don't want to. Right? Like, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
It was devastating.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And then you talk to people after, and they're like, oh, I would have shot him.
Yeah. Mostly men saying that. Yeah.
And I'm like, but would you? I mean,
Yeah.
so here's my weapon, the person, and a roommate, or another roommate.
It's easy for people to kind of Monday morning quarterback it, right? Who weren't there. They didn't actually know the situation. And in the end, I mean, you made the right call. You never had to pull the trigger, and the situation was, rectified.
Yeah.
So, I think, anyways, yeah, just kind of an example that, I mean, even in our family here, I mean, we've had something like that happen, and you hear statistics that there's up to 5 million defensive gun uses a year in the U.S. People will fight about that. I mean, some people will say no, it's more like 1 million or 600,000, but let's just say it's 500,000. Let's go really low, right? Yes, there are 40,000 ish gun deaths a year in this country. The majority of those are suicide, but let's just say even at that number, are we willing to give up the 500,000 people who use their gun defensively in those sorts of situations? Like, you're going to victimize those people. Why are you going to victimize 500,000 to 5 million people over? I know it's very unfortunate that 40,000 people die from guns, but is it like, just looking at it from the raw numbers, it doesn't make any sense. And as demonstrated by your example, I mean, the police may not be there for you.
Yeah.
And I think something that a lot of people aren't aware of, especially folks on the gun control side of this topic, is the police actually have no legal obligation to protect individuals. Their obligation is to uphold the law, not to protect individuals. And there's been Supreme Court cases about this, right? I mean, I think if you really think about the reasoning why, it sort of makes sense. I mean, if the police, every time that they prevented someone, if they failed to prevent a crime, if you could sue your local police department, they'd be bankrupt, in a year, probably a month, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. I mean, the state, that you can't be everywhere at once, right?
No.
So the police don't have that ability. So they have no legal obligation to actually protect you. And we've seen this in some of these mass shootings that have played out. Like most recently comes to mind is what happened in Uvalde. Sick thing, right? But, the police, there's no legal ramifications for them. I mean, sure, maybe some of them lost their jobs, but there's no criminal charges, right?
Right, yeah.
So, I just think people should realize that like, I mean, the police are there, but they're not something that you can count on, right? You are on your own. You are your best and, most reliable first responder.
Yeah. I mean, all the interactions I've ever had with the police, aside from speeding tickets, is them coming, taking my statement, and filling out some paperwork.
Yeah, it's just the reality. I mean, there's the number of police compared to the actual number of individuals that they are charged with protecting.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. And especially, we've seen like a lot of police, ever since kind of all the COVID craziness and the riots and things that happened, that a lot of police departments are, they don't have the staffing. I actually just saw somewhat recently a city, I think it was in Pennsylvania somewhere, they had something like they were no longer going to be responding to calls from the hours of like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. or something because they didn't have the staffing to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, that just kind of tells you, I mean, not only, even if they're full staffed, is the chances of them getting to you in time to help you, or potentially even having the opportunity to call for help.
Yeah.
But now put on top of that, they're actually at even lower resources. So,
yeah.
And as we saw during some of those, the rioting that happened a few years back over the George Floyd protest, I mean, we saw that play out several times. When we lived in Virginia, there was actually a case of a lady, I think it was in Fredericksburg, who she was basically blocked in the street, and she had protesters, whatever we would like to call them, kind of jumping all over her vehicle. She had a baby with her. She was very frightened, that something was going to happen to her. She called the police, and the police basically told her, yeah, we cannot come to you, and you are on your own.
Yeah.
Right. And that does happen more often than you think it does, right?
Yeah.
So, between the response time of the police getting to you, or them potentially not having the resources to get to you at all, coupled with the fact that they actually don't legally even have to protect you.
Sure.
You're on your own, and people should realize that.
From a protecting standpoint, I mean, I do think that they have, like, I don't want to bash the police fully. I mean, they do have they fill out their forms, and they track down the criminals when they can.
Yeah. And that's not my intent at all. I'm just saying the reality of it is, right? And I do think, I should add, I do think most police, if in a situation to, where they will have to kind of step out to protect you, I think most of them do, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the one that got called to your incident will.
Sure. Yeah.
So the whole point being just that you first and foremost need to be prepared to protect yourself, and the police are a great backup to that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they don't know what's happening till you call them.
Yeah. They don't know what's happening till you call them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was kind of a long rant about gun control, but yeah, we're not big gun control people. And that's just talking about the practical side of kind of self-defense at a personal level, right? Then you have the whole, the actual purpose of the Second Amendment, which is, potentially if our government became tyrannical.
Never.
I think some people would argue that if that hadn't happened before, that definitely happened today. I'm not saying I'm making that argument, but Yeah. It's I see.
Yeah.
When we step out of here from recording this, I'm going to be curious to get on social media and see what people are saying about everything that went down today with the conviction of Donald Trump and kind of yeah, a lot of stuff.
Craziness.
Yeah. So yeah. So that's the other whole side of it, right? Like should people have access to so-called, military style weapons? Yeah. I mean, I think if you understand the intent of the Second Amendment, people have a right to abolish their government if it becomes tyrannical, right? And if you don't have the means to do that, then you really don't have the right? You don't have the ability.
Yeah.
So people should maintain the ability to do that.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like with enough understanding about firearms, that actual type doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes when I make this point with people that I'm discussing this topic on,
Discussing
is
discussing.
They'll say things like, "Oh, your stupid AR-15s aren't going to do anything against a nuclear weapon," or as Biden likes to say, an F-35.
Yeah.
Or whatever kind of superior weaponry that that the government, should it turn tyrannical, may use on you. Couple of things. I mean, first, sometimes the people saying this to you are your neighbors, so you better hope the government's not using nukes on the people around you, because you're going to go right with them.
Yeah.
And and second, if I don't think it's making the argument they think they should. Like, so if you really believe that the government would be willing to use such weaponry on the people, then why are we even arguing about AR-15s? Why aren't we talking about more private ownership of tanks and planes and the actual things that you would need to fulfill the purpose of the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, the things that are allowed and aren't allowed just are crazy. There seems to be not a lot of rhyme or reason to it sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
But.
Anyhow. Okay. Well, maybe we've gone on long enough about that. What should we...
what else you got for us?
I don't know.
You're the topic guy.
I'm the topic guy.
I like to be surprised.
You like to be surprised. Yeah.
Clearly by my uneducation about some topics.
I don't really know. I mean, that was kind of all the big news on Twitter today. There was a conversation I entered into that I don't really know that I'm well prepared to talk about, but I saw several people, I don't know if it's because the algorithm was feeding it to me because I was interacting with somebody talking about it, but kind of this idea of polygamous marriage.
Polygamous marriage.
Yeah. That like basically like men, it's okay. And it's biblical for men to have more than one wife. And, I had some questions about that. And, I mean, the individual that I was having that discussion with did, he did respond to me, and I'm still kind of digesting what he said, but I don't think he gave really good reasoning in my mind.
Okay. Do you think there needs to be reasoning behind it, or do you think it's just an ideology that you don't subscribe to?
Well, I think this individual I was talking to, his basic premise is that the Bible doesn't outright forbid it, is kind of what his basic argument was, But, I think if you, just me personally, if you step back and look at it from, God created Adam and Eve. He didn't create Adam and Eve and Eve and Eve and Eve. Right.
Yeah.
So there's that. I mean, there's some scriptures in the New Testament with, Jesus talking about man and woman becoming one flesh. And, I think to me, there's more support that it's that the principle is one man, one woman in marriage. Yes, obviously those things happened in biblical times, but, the Bible is also kind of a book of history. It doesn't necessarily mean that those things were condoned. These were just things that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm having trouble kind of accepting that argument, that just because it doesn't explicitly forbid it, that it's okay. But I think just if we do look at what it does say, I don't think that's kind of the intent. And I also just have like a more practical question, which is the gender split is roughly 50% women, 50% men. So, you would think that if God's intent was for men to take on more than one wife, well, then the population split would be more like 75% men and 25%, vice versa. 25% men, like 75% women, right? So that there's a abundance of women for men to take multiple wives.
Well, maybe he's making abundance by calling men into the clergy. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I did kind of ask that question, and he didn't answer it, but somebody else basically said something to that effect, like not all men marry.
Right.
That only like 40% of men are fathers or something. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they were saying. So
Yeah, I was just being silly.
yeah, but I don't know. To me, it's just it's a hard. I'm going to need a lot more convincing to say that God does. I mean, even if you convince me, I would be like, yeah, I'm not. Like, why? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that's going to be a no from me, anyways.
Yeah, it's going to be a no from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't spend too much time trying to convince yourself.
You're not in charge here. Now it's a challenge.
Oh, no. I see.
Yeah.
So now we've turned this into a marriage podcast because we're going to have to work through this.
We somehow always end up going there somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I mean, who wants to deal with two wives? I mean, it's kind of funny to me. We have this whole there's like the whole red pill side of it of like women are evil, and just the kind of like it like no, like it's not wise for men to marry now. And there's kind of that whole viewpoint. And then we've got this other viewpoint of like, oh no, not only is it wise for men to marry, they should have like 5 wives. But then that means that, then there's like men out there that don't have wives available for them.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I'm not a polygamist. I don't know any polygamist. It just seems very convenient for the man sexually, right? So he's just bouncing around having sex with 5 different women, which is supposedly ego building. I don't know.
Yeah.
Still a no from me.
Yeah.
No, I say no.
You say no. You say it's not a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a thing, but you say it shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah.
The red pillars are going to have a field day with that. They're going to be like, I'm a beta for telling you no, or I'm not saying it, but I don't actually want another wife. But
yeah, I mean, I think if this was a serious conversation, we would have more conversation about it. Yeah. Obviously, this is not how the conversation would normally go.
Yeah, yeah.
This is just me expressing my initial viewpoint of.
Yeah,
but it's going to take a lot.
Yeah, but maybe it's kind of a good just road to go down. Just briefly for a minute is like. We do have a more traditional marriage for sure, where I'm kind of the head of the household. But I think it's important for people to note that, part of being a leader and being the head of your household is you solicit the thoughts and feelings. You're charged with the care of your family, right?
Yeah.
So if I get this like crazy idea in my head, I'm like, you know what? I need to bring another wife or 2 or 3 into this family. And, I mean... you could make this hardline argument that, well, you're the head of the household and you have a right to do it, but then at what cost, right? Because if it's something that's going to be bothersome to you.
Bothersome is a light word.
Right. But then like this guy that I was talking to today, I don't even know who he was, but he's some anonymous account. But, he would basically say, well, that woman is sinning, right? She is not being obedient to her husband as God intended, and she's a harlot, or maybe not a harlot. Maybe that's harsh. Maybe I'm putting words into his mouth, but,
Interesting. So if you decided to be cannibal, like I would have to be okay with that too. I mean, because we created a union over certain, like, there were definitions surrounding us. Yes, people change and evolve, but that's like a totally different. If you decide to be a mass murderer, I'm like just supposed to support you in that. I mean,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I think it's. I mean, that's why I think it's a lot of like. I don't think a good husband is going to. I mean, sure, there are little things that come up in marriage, right? That like sometimes you just have to accept, right? But like not to the point that it should be abusive.
Yeah.
And a good husband is not going to do things that are going to be abusive to his wife.
Yeah.
Number one, number two, or number three.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is extreme. This isn't like you want to go to Chipotle and I want sushi and you're like, no, we're going to Chipotle tonight.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm going to have multiple wives that's extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty extreme.
Because in my viewpoint, if you were like, hey, I'm going to have another wife, I'm going to be like, hey, you're actually just having an affair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Don't you think? I mean, that's an extreme case.
I think it's an extreme case. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the norm. That's
No.
for sure. I think you got a lot of uphill battles to kind of convince people that polygamy is the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole different religion
Yeah.
of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Well, let's find another wife. We'll just try it out.
No.
Yeah. Last thing I want.
Yeah.
It's
Could you handle two of me? No.
no.
I'm a little bit crazy.
A little bit crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you mean like emotionally handled two of you?
Yeah.
Like you get a little crazy sometimes. And
Yeah.
yeah, to have two people getting upset about things. Yeah, that's a lot.
Like standing too close to me at the stove.
And then like women, like don't their cycles line up, right?
Well,
So then
if they spend a lot of time together, but are polygamy wives spending a lot of time together?
I don't know
I think
what
it
the
depends
arrangements are.
Based on what I know from television. It depends on their like living arrangements and their family dynamics. And
Yeah.
so I watch TV and I have watched shows about polygamy. And it seems like polygamists are a little bit like libertarians. Like some believe you have to share a house, some have separate houses, some like do big
There's
family
no hard
events.
and fast rule.
No, there's no hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
They do all tend to agree that it's a 1-to-1 relationship, man to woman, not having truffles or threesomes. That's the word I'm looking for. Like they're not doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep the name because we don't dox anybody here. But I many years ago I worked with a guy, and when I tell the story, you're gonna remember it. Who he wanted to bring a second wife into his family.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and he was very adamant about that. And I kind of I left the company that we worked together, and I ended up leaving the company. And we caught up a few years later, and he at this point was divorced, right? He was divorced. His kid involved, a lot of the whole mess there, right? He had having some legal troubles, not related to his divorce. He kind of got a little crazy, but I had a chance to talk to him, and he kind of said to me, he's like in reflection and having an opportunity to kind of think about this. He said, he said, really what I wanted to do is just have sex with other women.
Right.
But because I'm a Christian, I was trying to read into, scripture that polygamy was okay. And so kind of my way to have sex with other women that was like acceptable in the eyes of God, or, per the natural order that God set up, is that, well, I just have to make her my wife. So as long as I make her my wife, I can have sex with her and there's no sin involved. Right.
Right.
So that was kind of where he, it was kind of interesting to see that he kind of had that revelation and just, thought about and be honest enough with himself to realize that that's really what it was. He was just like, yeah, I mean, my wife of, these, like, I want to have sex with another woman, so we'll just bring another wife in. Yeah, and obviously she wasn't having that, and they ended up getting divorced and all that stuff, which was always, I mean, well, I don't know. It wasn't like she was a bad looking girl.
Oh no.
Yeah.
She was very cute.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think have the hard conversations. If he had come to her and had been like, "Hey, I really want another wife because I would like to have sex with another woman."
I think you and I talked about that before, but yeah, it's like you
Yeah.
got to have the hard conversation. That's a big key to marriage and marriage making in a long time. You got to have the hard conversation, right? So like,
Yeah.
really like, okay, well, let's dig into that. What's under that?
Right.
Like, why is that? Like, why is there something going on sexually in our marriage is not good? Like, what
Right.
is it? Like, what is it
Right.
that's driving you to that?
She would have at least had the opportunity to kind of try to answer that
Yeah.
downfall that he was having.
Yeah. But I think, you know, I see a lot of men kind of arguing this point that men are not meant to be monogamous.
Sure.
Yeah.
Seems to be
That's like
pretty widely accepted.
That's a pretty widely accepted thing. Yeah. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
I just saw something on social media. They were interviewing a girl. I think it was actually in Las Vegas. This guy stands on the street and he just asks women like opinions about various things. And he was asking her. He was like, I can't remember what the lead into the topic was, but basically she said, you know, yeah, men like, you know, he's like, what would you do if like, you know, your man started like having sex with other women, you know, like, would you consider that cheating and being a problem? And she was like, no, as long as he comes home to me every night, that's fine. Like men are not monogamous. But yeah, I can see that made you throw up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I are pretty clean people, right? So like
Yeah.
there is that side of it too. It's like where are you you know, what kind of diseases and stuff are you bringing home?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that's the other side of it. Maybe that's why men want to make it their wives, because then it's like maybe that lessens the STD possibility. I don't know.
I mean, it lessens. It should
It
eliminate
should
that.
eliminate it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you got your two wives and then like just nobody is having sex with these women but you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. But as you were saying, yeah, communication is the key, right? So, you know, take that to your spouse, talk to them about it, and, you know, have the hard conversation, because if you don't have the hard conversation now, you're going to end up being forced into the hard conversation whether you want to or not.
Maybe you don't need a second wife. You just need a wig for your first wife.
Just need a wig for your first wife. Yeah, maybe. Who knows?
Just saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there any other obscure and weird topics we can talk about, or I guess maybe not?
I don't know. I did get your cheeks a little flushed there.
You know, I actually, well, I know people can't see them, but like we're sitting in a room, we have all these lights on us.
Yeah, it's warm in here.
It's warm, and we forgot to turn the air conditioner on. We usually, when we come in here to do this, we like to turn the air conditioner down, because this room, we've closed it up, the doors are shut to help with sound dampening and all that other stuff. And now we have all these bright lights that are shining on us, and yeah, it's getting a little toasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're approaching an hour. Not quite there, but I think that's probably long enough. Probably enough bantering and rambling for today.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah.
It kind of went all over.
Yeah. I think when we sat down, we were like, yeah, let's just have a quick 30-minute conversation, and now it's turned into an hour. So.
I almost said something I'm not going to, though.
But yeah, you probably best. I don't know what it was, but if you're having pause, it's definitely best to keep it to yourself. All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening if you did. And
Yep.
we'll see you the next time we feel like talking. We're gonna try to do this at least twice a week. And put
Twice
it
a
out
week?
there. Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of depending on what's going on, current events and all that sort of stuff. And we do travel quite a bit, so I don't really know how it's going to work in traveling.
Yeah.
Our sound's going to suck if we decide to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Be a much different setup than this. Hopefully our sound is better than our last one. I think
That's the
we're
goal.
starting to get things dialed in.
Progress over perfection.
Yeah,
That's our goal.
that's the goal. All right, well, enough rambling. We'll see you guys on the next one.